Calm, focus, happiness. Hey, Mindful Tribe, welcome to the show once again. Today, we're here to talk about being happy because we have the Chief Experience Officer and co-founder of Happy.me, and that's happy with two Y's, Happy.me. And it's a mental health company that's on a mission to improve people's happiness by providing guided ketamine therapy and digital wellness programs. And he's a serial entrepreneur. He has two successful exits. He was the co-founder and chief strategy officer of Psychable. And there's so much more I could say about him, and you'll learn about him as you listen. Matt Zemon. Matt, are you in mindfulness mode today?
I am totally in mindfulness mode today. Yes, I had a lovely meditation this morning, and I'm going to have a meditation here another hour and a half. And
Great.
yeah,
That's awesome.
definitely in mindfulness mode.
So what does mindfulness mean to you, Matt?
You know, it's funny, actually. As soon as I said I had a meditation earlier and one coming up, I realized that was probably not the best definition of mindfulness for me. The mindfulness for me is just awareness, is being more present in the here and now, and not living in either a past or a future that is both fantasy, which is very easy for me to do.
Yeah. Well, you have a very interesting book that's fairly new on Amazon, and the book is called Psychedelics for Everyone, a beginner's guide to these powerful medicines for anxiety, depression, addiction, PTSD, and expanding consciousness. It's got 74 really impressive reviews on Amazon. So what brought you to this place where you decided to write a book on psychedelics?
So I had back in 2019, I had my first psychedelic experience. Up until that point, I was not a drug user, not a big drinker, and just had this incredibly transformational experience where I was able to reconnect with my mom, who died when she was 49. I was able to just have insight after insight, and I wanted, as soon as I came out of the experience, it's like I needed to know more. And I dove into a master's program in psychology and neuroscience.
Wow.
And really a deep dive. And I wanted to take all the things I was learning, both about psychedelics as a whole, but then about kind of the 8 most common medicines that are used, and put them in a way that was accessible for the common person. But then also have all those chapters medically reviewed so that they could count on the information, but not written for someone with a medical background.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like it was not hard, but there's just so much information that to parse through that I could consolidate it down into a few hundred pages that would be easier to digest for people.
Wow. Well, that's a lot of changes to happen. And I find it interesting because I've read that sometimes it's important to hold off. If you have an experience with some of these drugs, that you'll get off that experience and you'll want to change so many things in your life, but yet it's maybe important to just take it slow and easy. Did you have that advice as well?
Yeah, I think that's really good advice, that people should not make major life changes for a few weeks or month after a major psychedelic experience. And I think the integration process. So let me back up for just a moment. When I talk about psychedelics, a lot of times people think they are cures, and I don't position them that way. I think they're catalysts. I think they're ways to open your mind that then can lead to different changes in your habits, changes in a way of living. And that whole process following the psychedelic experience is what we call integration. So having someone to work with, whether it's a coach like you, Bruce, or a licensed therapist, that the licensure is not as important as having somebody who understands mindfulness, understands, can help the inner power to heal, and can help you extract for yourself what you saw and how you want that to impact the rest of your life. So yeah, I did make a bunch of changes, but it wasn't within minutes. It was within months and years.
Sure. Well, on your website, it has a question, and I find this very interesting. It says antidepressants and talk therapy not helping. And then you go on to say, that you can possibly overcome anxiety, depression, suffering in different ways through some things that you might find there. And then you've got the word happy with two Y's and accents over the two Y's. What does that mean? Why are there two Y's on the end of the word happy?
So with happy, we were going to make them look like people. So we wanted the eyes and the Y's are kind of touching each other and all of that. But let's talk about antidepressants and kind of how the how we are what the mainstream thinks about. So we think to up until recently, the only option has been an antidepressant. And we know that they work in maybe 40% of the population. And even when they work, the side effect profile is pretty tough. I mean, everything from gastrointestinal issues, weight gain, memory fog, suicidal ideation, sexual dysfunction, really heavy price tag. But when you don't have a choice, people are willing to try this. It also takes upwards of 6 weeks to get into your system.
Yeah.
And then, and for many people, because most people are prescribed from a general practitioner instead of a psychiatrist, it's kind of set it and forget it. They get their medicine, and instead of being for an episode, 3, 6 months, it becomes for a year or a decade. And then coming off of them becomes really, really challenging. So what most people don't know is there is a legal alternative in the psychedelic space called ketamine. And people can go to their psychiatrist or go to their doctor and get this prescribed. And they can use ketamine and then go into a clinic and get an intravenous or intramuscular, then go to a clinic and get a nasal spray, or they can work with companies like Happy. And there's a number of others that provide these sublingual or oral tablets that go under your tongue. You do this at home, and you have about a 1 hour ketamine experience in your house. The efficacy on ketamine is pretty tremendous, and it doesn't come with those side effects. So one of the things I wonder is, should people go to antidepressants first, or would ketamine be a better place to start because the side effects are so less comparatively? And for those who are on antidepressants and would like to try something and they're not working for them, then just trying to help spread the word that ketamine might be an option for them. And it's something to go talk with your doctor about.
Okay.
One just quick thing while we're on this, I just want to be ketamine is in the world of psychedelics. Most psychedelics are not addictive. Ketamine has been shown to have addictive potential. So I just bring that up, that if you're listening to this podcast and you are offered ketamine in a recreational setting, be very careful with that medicine. It is something that can get out of hand. Doesn't have that effect typically in the medical environment, but it can recreationally. So just something to be aware of.
So Matt, is that legal everywhere, or are there some places where it is illegal?
No, all 50 states. Ketamine has been FDA approved since 1970, I believe. And then started to be used for mental health, I think, as early as 1974. And it's just gained popularity over the last few years. We've seen a rise in the amount of ketamine clinics and telehealth ketamine providers out there. But yeah, anyone in the United States can have access to ketamine. And that's one of the things that makes that particular psychedelic, even if it's not a classic psychedelic, popular. So you can do it legally, unlike psilocybin or MDMA, which again, the FDA has given breakthrough therapy designation to both of them. And we do expect MDMA to be legal here within the next 2 years and psilocybin shortly thereafter, but it's not legal today. So if you don't get into a clinical study, you have to travel to another country to do that legally, or you go into the underground market, and that has its own set of challenges.
And so is it true that most people or many people don't know about ketamine?
I think so. I think people have heard about it as a anesthesia, but they haven't heard about it for depression and anxiety. We in the academic space, it's again, there's a ton of literature. Anyone who's curious about this, go to maybe PubMed and type in ketamine for depression, and you'll see lots and lots of research papers on ketamine for that use, or ketamine for anxiety would be another one. But yeah, I just don't think it's widely known. Even in the doctor community, it's not widely known.
That's interesting. And how quickly does it help someone to change their mood or how they're feeling on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, I mean, it's really a powerful medicine. So again, if you're sometimes there's a little bit of a dial in period. And what they recommend, the best practice is you do roughly 6 sessions within about a month to kind of get it into your system. And then from that point, maybe it's once every 2 weeks or once every month or once every quarter, but it's not every day like an antidepressant. Um, what is and once the dose is established, or for especially if you go in, once the dose is established, you can feel results within minutes, within hours. It's incredible. It's one of the only medicines that doctors have available. If someone is in an active suicidal state, they can give them an IV of ketamine and knock them out of that state, which is
I
kind of
see.
incredible.
That
So
is incredible.
it's a powerful medicine. It's not 6 weeks to get it into your system.
And do you still take this medicine yourself?
I do use ketamine. I don't use it every week, but about once a quarter for me, I will do a tune up on ketamine to just kind of balance out the system.
And how about other psychedelics? You talk about them in your book. What do you have to say about some of the other popular psychedelics that are out there?
I think what I'd love your listeners to know is that there are 309 academic institutions studying psychedelics, and they're studying them because the results are pretty phenomenal. And I'm not saying to take my word for it. Again, Google whichever psychedelic you're thinking about and whatever for whatever condition you're thinking about and see what studies come up. But the FDA has given breakthrough therapy designation to MDMA. I'll talk about that for a moment.
Mm-hmm.
MAPS has just finished the phase 3 clinical trials for MDMA. And this is incredible, Bruce. They were working with treatment resistant post traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD. So
Mm-hmm.
picture veterans, first responders, victims of sexual assault, people where none of the existing therapeutics have worked for them. Talk therapy hasn't worked, any of the different the medicines or techniques have not worked. They've given them talk therapy and 3 sessions of MDMA, and 67% no longer qualify as having PTSD. It's an incredible number for people who
Mm-hmm.
thought there's nothing was going to work for them. So super excited to see that on the path for relegalization. But it took over $100 million and I think 20 years, 25 years to make this happen. Um, Psilocybin, groups like Johns Hopkins is studying this with end of life terminal patients.
Mm-hmm.
There's other studies for things like alcohol, eating disorders, OCD. And again, the results are just incredible. Um, we are seeing a movement in our country where people who have terminal illnesses are trying to, because you can grow psilocybin yourself. So
Oh,
they are doing things like that. And it's certainly in the scale in the range things that are easy to get relatively. I mean, mushrooms grow in every continent except Antarctica out in the wild, so people can also find them themselves. But it's just again, I feel it's a shame that people can't have a marketplace where they can buy this easily. But it's, I mean, again, just powerful um, things being done. Everything from, if you want to take the medical world, or for spiritual growth.
okay. And let's talk about negative experiences that people have had with some of these psychedelics. How do you avoid that?
Yeah, so I think the difference with any between a medicine and a poison is dose. What's amazing about psychedelics, which again I did not know until I got into this, is if you look at the harm to self or harm to others profile of different drugs. Dr. Nutt out of, I believe, Imperial College in London did this study. On the far end of the spectrum are things like alcohol, great harm to yourself, great harm to others. Heroin's on that side. Tobacco's up on the far left-hand side. On the far right, like 1/20th of the harm to self and others are things like psilocybin mushrooms. So can people have very challenging experiences on mushrooms? Of course they can. And we can do all sorts of things to mitigate that, to make the probability less. But like any medicine, sure, but the statistically, you're going to have less harm to yourself, less harm to others using things like psilocybin mushrooms and MDMA than you are using tobacco and alcohol, which is legal. So the scheduling of drugs in our country was not really based on science. It's based on politics.
Interesting. So you've written the book that we've talked about already, the book called Psychedelics for Everyone, A Beginner's Guide to These Powerful Medicines. So do you help people who want to go on a journey with some of these psychedelics? Do you do that kind of thing?
I don't personally do that. So I see my role as helping to get some information out there in a way that's digestible. So even the title, Psychedelics for Everyone, I meant that to be catchy, but I certainly don't mean that everybody should take a psychedelic. But I do think it's important that people read this book and understand how they can help our society. And that can change how they vote. That can change how they talk about mental health, can change how they think about mindfulness and spirituality. It can do a lot of good for the world to just be more informed about what psychedelic medicine is. So that's really what I'm trying to do, is get the word out, not convince anybody to do anything, but just get information into people and let them make their own decisions. I lost you somewhere.
Yes. Help them make their own decisions. So let's just pick it right up there.
Sure.
So yes, and I was just going to ask a question. Who should not take psychedelics?
Are you going to ask a question?
Oh, you didn't hear it? I guess
No.
our
Just
connection
I
is
heard.
unstable. Okay, here we go. Yeah, so my question is, who should not take psychedelics?
Okay. Yeah, that's a really good question. So there's two answers to that. There is what the research has been done. So if you think about how hard it has been to research psychedelics, they've really tried to go for kind of a mainstream population. So they screen people out who have any history of schizophrenia or bipolar, and even 1 degree of separation. So a parent would get somebody excluded from a clinical trial. Um, Not a lot of research on autism, as another example. Um, so if you're looking for data to determine whether you should participate using a psychedelic, those are things to keep in mind. If you go into the citizen scientist community, you go into the Reddit boards and say, okay, I'm bipolar and interested in psychedelics, you'll find lots and lots of people who are bipolar and using psychedelics. And there'll be advice, okay, just don't do it when you're in a manic state.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's interesting. Again, I'm not saying for someone who's bipolar to use psychedelics. I'm just saying that's where the information that's available is. Um, we also should separate large dose or macro dose psychedelics, which is what a lot of these studies are on, where you're taking, I don't know, if you're doing psilocybin, 5 grams of psilocybin as an example, and then microdosing, where you're taking a tenth to a 20th of a dose. And that's very different. The population that can do that type of um, experience is much greater, because it's a very small amount of that medicine. Um, but again, if you have a history of mental illness in the family, definitely talk with your doctor, talk with a professional about whether this is a good fit for you. If you're taking different existing prescription medications or supplements, again, talk with a doctor or experienced facilitator on whether it's a good fit for you. But that information is out there. One other, I'll give one shout out here. There's a doctor out there called the Spirit Pharmacist, Dr. Ben Malcolm, who's a PharmD, and he does consultations with anybody across the country. So he's not selling you anything. He's just purely providing information. And he will look at your history, look at your medications, and talk to you about what psychedelics might or might not be a good fit. With, again, no interest to help you actually procure the medicine or do a journey. He's just trying to make sure that what we know in the science world is given to you and get based on your specific circumstances. So I think the work that he does, there's a few other people like him that do that type of consult, who really specialize in psychopharmacology, are really doing good work.
Interesting. Well, you took this and you had good results, but why else are you so passionate about sharing the information and spreading the word?
So this was the rabbit hole I did not expect. I didn't understand all the different implications of that touch on psychedelics. I didn't understand that these aren't magic pills, that they're mind openers, heart openers, and that can help. I'll speak in the first person. They help me remember that life wasn't always like the life I've built. Um, and I didn't understand that the war on drugs that I had lived my entire life in a prohibition. Just didn't understand it. I didn't understand that the people who were using this for religious purposes had sincere religious beliefs, and I just didn't know. And I can go on and on over this, but I think there's a lot of people like me who have just grown up in our culture, followed the rules, believed what we were told, and yeah, and I find it somewhat upsetting that the science that the what doctors and scientists and journalists and our government and teachers told me for 50 years wasn't the truth.
So
And
you feel like we've been deceived.
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And and this is a direct experience medicine. This is your inner knowledge, your inner yeah, you get to have a direct experience and then decide what you want to do with this medicine.
I see.
And I think people should have the option as adults to have that experience for whatever reason brought them there. They can come on the medical route, great. And if they want to go see a doctor and get prescribed ketamine or get into a clinical trial, that's beautiful. But if they want to come and if they want to go in the decriminalization route and they want to approach it, and plants should be legal because they are plants, they're provided in Mother Nature. I respect that. And whatever reason they want to use their medicine for that purpose, that's great. And if they want to come to it because they do have a religious belief or are curious about exploring their religious beliefs, they should be allowed to do that, especially in this country that was founded on religious freedom. And I just didn't know that all these paths existed to this medicine.
Why do you think that governments have put so much effort into convincing people to stay away from these?
I think a lot of reasons. So we know the Nixon administration, I mean, what they've talked about very publicly post him leaving office was they were trying to break up the anti-war left and then the Black civil rights movement. And they felt that by coming down on creating drug laws was a way to infiltrate those groups and to change policy. So that's certainly one reason. Another reason is this is not a these sometimes people choose a less conventional path for their future after a psychedelic experience. And the conspiracy side of me says the new conspiracy side, because I didn't have this 5 years ago, is like, okay, well, maybe that's not what the government or some of the religious institutions want, or what big pharma wants. And then there's the monetary. This is not a something you do every day. For many people, you do it once in your life. So it's not very easy to make money off of this versus the industrial prescription complex that we have today. So I think there's a lot of, and also compared to alcohol and tobacco, those are altered states that are widely accepted in our culture, and they're not very interested in another form of a way for people to alter their states coming out. So I think there's a number of reasons why people are against this coming forward. And again, I'm just trying to spread the word that every individual should make this decision for themselves and not necessarily just accept what they've been told.
And how do some of these substances help people who suffer from addictions?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Bruce, because it's kind of counterintuitive. Oh, someone's addicted to heroin, we're going to give them ibogaine. Um, and so there's anyone interested in this subject, the work of Gabor Mate out of Canada
Yeah.
is really phenomenal. And he's got this the wisdom of trauma concept, which is all addictions, whether it's to a substance or to gambling or to pornography or to work or to relationships, comes from trauma. Um, and that trauma is has a root somewhere in your history. The idea or the theory is that psychedelics help you explore those traumas and look back upon things that happened in your life without shame, blame, or guilt. And when you can do that, you can heal those at the core, at the root, at the cause. And with those healings, you can then change your lifestyle moving forward.
Yeah. Okay. Can you share with us a real life experience of someone that you know that has embraced the use of these substances and moved to a more positive place?
Oh, I get the joy of seeing that regularly through these different retreats that I participate in. Um, I'll just go with I'll tell a story from my past.
Mm-hmm.
And as a I'll tell two stories. My mom died when she was 49. I was 22, and I went about the rest of my life just kind of missing her, having this big hole where she was. Got married, missed her, had kids, and missed her. Just moved forward. And in that first psychedelic experience, she was there. I could connect with her and pull her kind of through me to my kids, see that connection, and realized, oh my gosh, she's not gone. She's just in this other place. Um, and I don't have to miss her. I'm carrying her forward. There's a part of her in me. There's a part of her in my kids. Um, that was beautiful. And I felt incredibly safe and loved. And then realized, oh my gosh, here I am in my mid 40s, and I don't normally feel safe and loved, not like I did on the medicine.
Mm-hmm.
And then that was, well, why? What am I doing with my life? What am I worried about? What am I afraid of? And those questions are the ones that are the work to look at that after the psychedelic experience, and be more aware of, I can be here now. I don't have to do anything to be worthy of love and to be, to be whole. Huge, huge difference in the way I looked at the world. The other example, later experience was, so I'd had in early teenage years, some inappropriate sexual contact with a family member 10 years older. And
Mm-hmm.
I was mortified about this experience. Didn't talk to anybody. When certain jokes would be made or things, I'd feel my cheeks getting red, a pit in my stomach. On a psychedelic journey, I was right back in that situation. And they tell you to, if you see something you don't like or you're afraid of, to ask it, what are you here to teach me?
Mm-hmm.
Not to run away from it, but to go for it. So I was able to spend some time there and to look at this person not as a person who did something to me, and not having to condone what happened, but I could look at her as a human and say, okay, wow, what a tough life she was having at that moment. She was struggling with substance use challenges. She had essentially been rejected from her father. She had had challenges with her siblings. A lot was not going on for her. Awful decisions that she made, but I could understand it. I could understand that desire to feel love, to feel affection, to feel, um, yeah, I could understand it, and I could forgive it. I could let it. It was not mine to carry. And after, well, over 30 years, it was able to go away. And now I can
Wow.
talk about it and I can move on. Um, and I didn't even realize that until the weight was lifted, I didn't realize how heavy it was that I was carrying. Yeah, super, super powerful. And I can, 1,000 of those stories I have now seen over the last 5 years with just people in this, in their journeys with this.
Wow.
The journeys can be hard, like that was hard, but they can be incredibly powerful too.
Wow, what a story. That's incredible. Wow. Do you have any kind of story about bullying where maybe mindfulness would have made a difference or just some insight?
Yeah, I definitely do. So it's interesting. So the school that I subscribe to is we're 100% accountable for everything. So if there's a bully in my life, I put that bully there. That's something to do with the way I'm interacting. No one's doing anything to me. I've created it all. So again, over the last few years, I've seen some bullying behavior from certain individuals. And my what this medicine has forced me to do is look at that and say, what is really happening? Why am I allowing myself to interact with this person, or how am I interacting with this person? And then what do I need to do to change that interaction? And to do so in a way that is not, again, not from a victim perspective. So I can say, I can think of a couple examples here where it's like, this is not, I appreciate what you're trying to teach me. And I've recreated, um, thinking of an older gentleman who I felt bullied from. Um, I recreated in many ways my father, who was an alcoholic, who was an older person who would have these one moment, everything's fine. The next moment be a fit of rage.
Mm-hmm.
And I found another older gentleman who fit that role. And it was an unstable role. And I was able eventually to come to the conclusion of, okay, I don't need this anymore. I can see it. I can recognize that this is a pattern. He's not the first person I've put in my life that has this behavior pattern. And I can say, thank you for the lessons, and I can move on. And I think recognizing that will help me, or has helped me, avoid situations like that in the future. Does that resonate with you,
Yeah,
Bruce?
that does resonate with me. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. As we move forward in the interview, I want to ask you 5 quick answer questions. And the first one, Matt, is about someone who has been a powerful mindfulness influence in your life.
Yeah, that's a good question as well. I got a bunch of them. I had a friend's mom growing up who was just so kind, so present, and just always made always always there. I never felt like I was taking her away from something else. And I look at my interactions with my kids and my wife, and I haven't always been that person by any stretch. I've not been very present. I've been, oh, I've got to work in this deal. I've got to work in this thing for business. I've got to work many, many things that kept me away. She was a good role model of when you're together, you're together.
Mm-hmm.
And that stuff can wait till when you're not together. So she's right. Yeah. So I guess my great friend from high school's mom is who I'm thinking of.
Awesome. Tell us about how mindfulness has helped you deal with your emotions in a different way.
I had never heard that emotions are feedback. They're unrealized thoughts, or they and many times they are thoughts that I haven't fully been formed. So yes, if I see a tiger in the jungle, I know that tiger's going to eat me. I can be scared. That's type of emotion. But a lot of times, like we talk about having a gut feeling. What is that? That's something. That's a thought that's trying to express itself and just can't do it through a traditional way. So mindfulness has helped me. Sorry, mindfulness in this path has been okay, be aware. Don't need to, all of the feelings are good. The whole spectrum is here to teach me something, and I can embrace it. I don't need to suppress any of it, and I need to listen to it more. And I need to be aware of it. It's working for me somehow. We've evolved over all these millions of years to have these feelings. It's working for us. And I was told and maybe it's my generation and being a man, it's like, oh no, tuck that away. That's not okay.
Yeah.
Mm-mm,
Yeah.
not true. Those are here for a reason. They're our allies. They're working for us. Embrace them.
I totally agree. Yeah. My next question is about breathing. Do you have a comment or idea about breathing and how that helps you as far as mindfulness is concerned?
Yeah, Again, so you're hitting all the top topics here. I wasn't aware of my breath. I wasn't aware of how powerful that and how automated our breath is. And that when I focus on my breath, just that simple thing, it's easy to calm down and it's easy to become present. So when I'm angry, let me just breathe through this for a minute and allow this to process. Take some time to think versus just reacting. When I'm starting the day, can I just focus on the breath and just remind myself, just be aware and be here. And even 10, 20 minutes of that in the morning can change the rest of the day. So the breath is such a simple thing to focus on, but also as those of us who practice meditation know, it can be also hard to stay focused because thoughts come floating by constantly to interrupt that.
Yeah. Matt, you have a terrific book, Psychedelics for Everyone. But are there any other books that you would recommend that are related to mindfulness?
Absolutely. I love oh my gosh, just The End of Your World. I
Okay.
think is a beautiful book. That's more in spiritual awakening, which but ties into mindfulness. The Stephen Cope book, The Wisdom of Yoga, I think is a fantastic book for mindfulness practice.
Very interesting. The Wisdom of Yoga.
Yoga, Stephen Cope.
Very good. Okay, we'll put all of that into our show notes at mindfulnessmode.com. So Mindful Tribe, you can check that out. The End of Your World, and the other book, The Wisdom of Yoga. And are there any apps that you would recommend that can help with mindfulness?
So I can do my shameless plug for take2minutes.org. It's a nonprofit that I helped start, but really Mark Fussell is the genius behind it, but that's free. And it's a text-based service. So he built it really for his high school son as a way to send him kind of daily affirmations, and then build out from there to the point now where you can get free meditations every day. You can write it. Send me a sleep meditation in a woman's voice with ocean's waves. Just send a text, and it'll send you a sleep meditation with an woman's voice and ocean waves. Super, super smart on what it can do, and has a whole bunch of mindfulness activities, and then also gratitude journals and other things that are really focused on the positive psychology realm. So all evidence backed techniques. So I love that one, and it's free. So I'll go with that one for today.
Awesome. Very good. Well, as we move toward the end of the podcast, I want to ask you if you have any final words of wisdom for our Mindful Tribe listeners.
It is. I love that you have a mindful tribe. I think the people who are listening to you, Bruce, are already deep into this path and trying to increase their awareness and increase presence. The connection to psychedelics for me is I was not a great meditator at all before psychedelic medicine. And I think for me, being shown what's possible, what does it mean to be fully present, fully in connection with the universe, has helped me in non-psychedelic states really drop in. So it's been a quite the journey. I think meditators, I think you have an unfair advantage when it comes to psychedelic medicine because you've been practicing many of the techniques that the ceremonial leaders and facilitators and medical community are teaching the newbies, which is you have to be present, you have to surrender to the breathing through difficult situations, all of that. I think meditators have a kind of an unfair advantage.
Well, it's been really great having you on the show, Matt. Thank you so much for being part of Mindfulness Mode.
Bruce, I appreciate the work you do, and I appreciate you having a tribe of people, that a community that's all into this together. So thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Bye now. Hey, Mindful Tribe. Are you experiencing anxiety? Are you experiencing stress and tension and feeling as though, it's just difficult to move on? That describes the clients I work with. Clients who have had an awful lot of problem with anxiety and stress, and maybe some kind of habits that are holding them back. And through hypnosis, we get to the bottom of it. We get right in there and we talk about it. But with hypnosis, we get right into what is causing some of this in your subconscious mind, because your subconscious mind represents about 90 to 95% of your thoughts. And you don't even realize what those thoughts are much of the time. And through hypnosis, we can get in there and we can work at this. Doesn't mean we're going to change what's going on in your subconscious mind. It means we're going to become more aware of it and then deal with it and think of it differently in the conscious mind. And I am so happy to have helped so many people with their anxiety through hypnosis and coaching. And you could be the next person. If you're listening to this episode and you would like to let go of some of this anxiety, send me an email, bruce@mindfulnessmode.com. Put coaching session in the subject line, coaching session, send it to bruce@mindfulnessmode.com. And I would love to have you on a Zoom call for a free session where we can talk about what's going on and what's happening and how can I help you. Because that's one thing I truly know about myself, is that I really love helping other people, and I would love to help you. So thanks for listening. Take what we've learned today to reach new heights of calm, focus, and happiness. Stay in the mode.